Hello and welcome to this episode of Kennedy Saves the World. So often we ask ourselves, how on God's green and golden earth am I going to survive Mercury in retrograde? Well, guess what, friends? Mercury went retrograde just a couple days ago, so we're in it, and supposedly this is a doozy of a cycle. If you know nothing about astrology, it doesn't matter. Come pour yourself a beverage and enjoy this happy hour. I'm joined by Ophira Edut, who is one of the Astro twins. She and her sister are authors, they are astrologers, they are healers, they are teachers. And Ophi is back. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm sorry your sister is not here.
Yeah, well, I'll channel her in.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
This is for you. This is a little
goodness.
Mercury in retrograde sweet
True
tequila shot. You don't have to.
serum.
You do not have to shoot it. You can
No,
sip it.
I'll sip.
But we have the little skulls because I love skulls.
Oh, yeah. That's good.
Oh,
Who
that's
doesn't
lovely.
need a drink in March? Oh,
No,
my God.
that's a nice
That's a good
reposado
one.
tequila.
Yeah,
Yes,
very good.
So
I love it.
tell me, how should people? Okay, first of all, explain why Mercury in retrograde is such a concern for so many people.
Okay. Well, should I explain a retrograde?
Yeah,
first,
you can
what
explain
it is?
retrograde,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if you've ever been in a car and passed a car moving at a different speed and felt like you were going backwards, or it was, have you ever had that optical illusion? That's what a retrograde
Or on
is.
car commercials when
Right.
when wheels appear to be going backward when a
Yes.
car is moving forward.
Exactly. That's a retrograde. So when a planet passes the Earth in its journey around the sun and they're traveling at different speeds, one will appear to go backwards.
Okay.
And since we measure astrology by our view from Earth, we measure the degrees that a planet travels. It will look like it's going backwards, so we measure it that way. And Mercury rules communication, technology, transportation, travel. So everything Mercury rules goes quote unquote backwards for
Yes.
us. It happens 3 or 4 times a year, and it's a concern because we rely on all these things in this world today. And so it's kind of a shit show.
So when we entered into 2025, Mercury was in retrograde, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And that was, so I remember last time I spoke to you and your sister, it was sort of forecasting the new year. What can people look forward to? Will there be healing? Will the pendulum sort of sit still for a moment? Is it going to swing wildly?
Yeah.
And you and your sister both said, okay, hold on to your hat. It's going to get really good, as we move into spring, but at first it's going to be very tough. And then the California wildfires hit. And I
Yeah.
thought of the two of you as I was watching my town of Pacific Palisades
Oh my
burn.
God.
Do people have to fear an event like that during this retrograde?
No. So that was Mars retrograde, which does, Mars is the fiery planet that happens every 2 years. And it was retrograde in Cancer, which rules homes. So it's
Whoa.
also its least favorite place to be. And yeah, that was a unique cosmic alignment. We shouldn't fear that necessarily repeating. But yeah, the Q1 of 2025. So the planets that are closest to the sun are called the personal planets, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. And all of them are or were retrograde in the first quarter of the year. So, Mars was retrograde all the way until February 23rd. We got a week off, barely. And then March 1st, Venus went retrograde, and then Mercury March 15th till April 7th. So it's been a lot. And we have 2 eclipses this month.
Okay, so what should you do when it's in retrograde? Like, should you stay home more? Should you take a bath in salt water and apple cider vinegar every night? Should you trim the
Why
ends of
not?
your hair? Should you not sign contracts?
Right. So retrograde, the prefix RE to go back is what, most astrologers will tell you. So you want to focus on tying up loose ends versus doing anything new. So look, if you have to sign a contract, you sign it, but read the fine print over. Don't just wing it and not get an attorney, Trimming your hair, and definitely very carefully during Venus retrograde, which rules beauty. And
Oh.
yeah.
Have you heard of people doing that? Because I heard of an Israeli designer. Before every full moon, she trims like a millimeter from her hair.
Interesting. I
Yeah.
mean, a full moon, sure. Your hair and nails supposedly grow more between the new and full moon. We're very planetarily directed, whether we realize it or not.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And these things do have an influence on our lives.
Yeah.
So when Mercury ceases to retrograde and goes direct,
Yep.
what can we expect in April?
Well,
Tell
it'll
me
be.
it's awesomeness. Like people need a dose.
We need a dose of
awesomeness to look
awesome.
forward to.
I feel like from the second half of April on, it's going to start to lighten for us because it's almost like we mashed up all of the mayhem in these first three and a half months of the year. So I think I think everything has been in this sort of compressor and pressure cooker. So I think the steam is going to get let out of it a little bit then.
How is that going to happen?
Well, Mercury will be direct in Pisces, and then it'll move back into Aries. So some of the things that have been confusing, that we haven't quite been able, what's real, there's a lot of disinformation and confusion more than ever going on right now. So we're going to see that kind of clearing up a little bit and be able to be like, all right, I can kind of distinguish what's really going to happen and what was a bunch of hype. But we are going to see that we are seeing some repeating cycles from the 1860s this year too. So, and from the late 1700s. So there's a lot going on with the economy related to that.
That's a little while because we had the Revolutionary War and then the Civil War.
Yeah.
So we definitely, how were wars, like based on what you know about what was happening before the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, what did astrology say about that period, and is it repeating right now?
Yeah.
And should we be concerned about that?
Well, so one of the periods that's going to be repeating this summer is the 1790s. So when the stock market was first created, the dollar was minted, the U.S. Treasury opened 1792. Pluto was in Aquarius and Saturn was in Aries. That's happening again.
Okay.
Pluto is in Aquarius for the first time since 1798, now for the next 20 years. So that is going to shift how money and the monetary system develops. No surprise.
Okay.
And Saturn and Aries, look, I mean, I do think that the changes that we're seeing are the kind of changes that were made in preparation for war, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's gonna be one.
What else could we be preparing for?
Again, a new monetary system, a new just AI technology revolution really storming in. This summer, we have Uranus, the planet of technology, in Gemini. It was last there in the 1940s, and then prior to that, the 1800s, 1858 to 65. And so during the Civil War. And also Neptune moving into Aries for the first time since the 1860s, too. So we had the end of slavery.
At the end of slavery, but the table is set for...
Yeah, there was a lot.
Like if our politics keep moving in a certain direction, meaning if we keep on this path of division, the astrological table is set for a big event.
Yeah, we have to learn the lessons from that time. I was looking at it, 1861, when Neptune was moving out of Pisces into Aries, as it is at the end of this month, we had Abraham Lincoln issued the first income tax, and tariffs, interestingly, were a thing then. So there were 3 tariffs, and that many people believe started the Civil War. So we have to be careful of that. I mean, I feel like there is a Civil War already brewing. Not to get all heavy. I did say it was going to get better. Personally, it is. But on a world stage, there's, a lot of that going on.
How can people best navigate in their personal lives astrology to their advantage?
I think they really, really need to work on nervous system regulation. That apple cider bath is no joke.
Yes.
Apple cider vinegar, not apple cider.
I'm a big fan of the apple cider vinegar bath.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever bathed in it.
What you put there's some people say put a full bottle of apple cider vinegar in a full bathtub.
Wow.
I don't do that, but I do like a quarter.
Okay.
And I really feel like it balances you. It pulls out any negativity from your body. I feel like baths in and of themselves, in contrast with showers, are very purifying and very
Yeah.
soothing. Like there's something about being in a bath that centers us and makes us feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you add apple cider, and, I'm a big fan of Epsom salt. Like
Yeah.
anything that heals, purifies, balances. I think that even if it's just putting you at ease a little bit, I think
Yeah.
there's a great positive benefit to that.
For sure. And you being a super Virgo, like, know about all the natural health remedies too. So, but absolutely. I mean, when I was looking at the astrology of the moment and thinking, like, we're pretty lucky. We have relatively not been through things that people have had to deal with throughout history. What did they do when they couldn't just, like, order Uber Eats and, like, watch Netflix to hide out?
Or relocate to a cabin halfway across the country, like a
Right.
lot of people did. A lot of
Exactly.
people loaded up their car or, bought a van and just
Mm-hmm.
hit the road and moved on. And I don't think there's another time in our history where that many people would have been able to
No.
temporarily migrate the way
Yeah.
they did.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead and move to Portugal if you want to. I can hardly blame you. But yeah, I think that it's a time to develop resilience. And we've never had so much stress despite our seemingly cushy lifestyles.
hmm
We're also regulating against so much stimulation. So balance is
How
going to
can
be
you use
key.
how can you use astrology to balance, especially
Well,
something like your nervous
yeah,
system?
absolutely. Well, I think you can notice there's a noticing. We need to slow down. This being the year of the snake. The last time I was on, it was still the dragon year. Now we're in the year of the snake. And we like to say, like, simplify to amplify and go slow to go fast.
hmm
So slow down and just don't overload your schedule. Don't try to only, respond, don't react if you can, or just don't do anything sometimes.
hmm
I mean, most people are waking up and hitting the Apple News button on their iPhones or whatever, and you feel like damned if you do, damned if you don't. But I'm not gonna say, oh, just stick your head in the sand and don't pay attention and just manifest. No, you can't do that right now. But you have to take breaks and know that everything can't be breaking news all the time.
Don't go anywhere. More Kennedy Saves the World right after this.
Like
Oh.
I know, and I probably have the same habit as a lot of people. Like I never say no to stuff. Like I'm really bad at saying
Oh,
no
yeah.
when people ask me to contribute to something or be on something, be a part of something. I always say yes. Like if I don't have an actual reason or prior commitment to say no, I always say yes because I feel like if I don't, I'm being dishonest, and it's really easy to overload my schedule. And I feel like a lot of
Yes.
people are in that mindset. And
Absolutely.
that is the opposite of, the tortoise beating the hare.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're constantly in hare mode, constantly in rabbit mode, like going, going, going,
Mm-hmm.
chasing, pushing. And you're saying this is a good time to reset and receive
Yeah.
as opposed to just transmitting constantly.
Exactly. I mean, FOMO is real, and yeah, I appreciate the integrity behind that. So, I do think part of the resilience. I mean, I think we're coming out of the first 5 years of the 2020s were very much about people discovering trauma, but then we've gotten really overly careful with each other to the
Yes,
point
that's a
where
really good point.
yeah, I'm gonna traumatize someone if I say no, kind
Yeah.
of thing. Like we've veered into mass cultural codependence,
Yes. That's a
Um,
really good point. And I was thinking about that the other day because so many people are comfortable expressing their mental health crises and their trauma as
mhm.
if the expression in and of itself is the end of the journey. And it's like, no, that's really where you start. And then you
Mhm.
heal yourself and move on and learn from it.
Yeah.
And, that's the next step that we desperately need right now is
Yes.
the healing, the therapeutic examination and strengthening. And I was talking to Benjamin Hall, the resiliency,
Mhm.
and then using all of that, integrating all of that to move forward
Yeah.
and to be more productive and more receptive
Exactly.
and to help other people to heal and to move on instead of what can become a mass wallowing.
Yeah, oh, that's a good way of putting it. Absolutely. I think that is exactly it. The resiliency. The next step is I had a friend who was in recovery who said there's a difference between explaining and excusing. So your trauma explains. I mean, Kanye West right now, Gemini, ruled by Mercury. Mercury's retrograding, went on a crazy rant on Twitter yesterday. And, he just it's take his devices away during Mercury retrograde, or maybe always. But people are, oh, his mother died. Well, that was 20 years ago or something.
Yeah,
So
and it's sad. It's absolutely sad, but that that's an acknowledgement. It's not the focal point.
right.
And that's it. That's it. We have to learn from our traumas. It's like you can be sensitive to them, but that's a wonderful way of describing it. Like, if all you do is bend yourself into a pretzel trying to accommodate someone's trauma, then that is codependency, because
Right.
you're not giving them the dignity of growth.
Right. And, case in point, I just was like, oh, I said crazy about his rant because that was a colloquial thing that, and then thought bubbles like, wait, can't say that anymore, which I'm glad I know. So apologies to anyone
but
I
also,
offended.
like, there are words that are
Right.
shorthand that we understand that
Right.
are not necessarily code for I'm privileged.
Right.
It's like,
But at the same time, like, we have to strive to be sensitive to what people have gone through, but also be like,
yeah. But
okay,
if you are that
my intent-
anti-Semitic, and if you are that
Right.
angry at your vindictive at your ex-wife, that is crazy.
yeah, well, yes, it is.
Like
It is
a
not
person who is
well, that's for
bipolar.
sure.
Yes, that is mental illness.
It is mental illness.
And I think that we can make the distinction between
Right.
the two.
Right, exactly. But I mean, that's where we are. Like, okay, we're all learning vocabulary and we're not going to get it right every time. But looking
And we
at what
shouldn't be canceled if we
Right,
say
like-
something that we know the person we're talking to understands the definition of, even as we say it in jest, like, they understand it. Therefore, it's kind of okay to say it.
Right. Or it's not okay to say it anymore. I said it and I have awareness of it.
Yeah.
And then I express that awareness of it. So we have to allow at least space for that. Okay, you're right. Good point. That's not a word that really is with the times. It's just, how do we have those kinds of conversations instead of moving immediately to outrage because of our nervous systems? Like, we cannot handle you could be on 24/7 outrage. So I think these retrogrades are a time to really have conversations about that. How can language is always evolving. I grew up in a home where 5 languages could be spoken at any given time.
That's
And,
amazing.
yeah, my mother speaks 5 languages, and then my grandparents spoke other ones. So it was, which is probably why astrology appeals as a universal language. But, I get it. So, yeah.
Do you incorporate traditional astrology with Chinese astrology?
Yeah, I love Chinese astrology. Yeah.
And do you feel like they say the same thing? Is there overlap? And also, is there a disconnection between them that is hard to reconcile?
Yeah, so the Western astrology is based on the sun, the solar astrology, and the Eastern is lunar, lunisolar, actually. It's the sun and the moon together. So, but the Chinese zodiac is actually Jupiter. Jupiter moves once a year, so that's why the animal changes once a year.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. So, and Jupiter is a planet of luck. So, each of the Chinese signs is associated with the Western. So we're rats, which is actually associated with Sagittarius and the planet Jupiter. So
Interesting.
Yeah, each Chinese animal has a Western sign equivalent and a planet.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
It was never fun. Like, when we found out, when we're kids, like, oh, great, we're rats.
Rats, water rats, we're drowned rats.
And the only
I'll
good
have a
thing
drink
was,
to that.
Amen.
Let's have some liquid. To the rats.
Smooth when it hits the
It's
lips.
so good.
Well, my dear, it's so good to talk to you. The Astrology Advantage. This is one of the Astro Twins books, and 2025 horoscope is available now. Astro Twins, Ophira and Edut. So, EDUT. So find it, love it, know it, internalize it, take care of yourself. Take apple cider vinegar baths, listen to and read everything they say, and broadcast.
Drink tequila.
And when in doubt, drink tequila.
Yeah, that'll get you through the retrograde. Yeah, cheers
Thank you,
to
Ophi.
that.
Cheers.
Thanks.
This has been Kennedy Saves the World Happy Hour, along with Ophi and Kennedy.
Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.
Oh, go ahead and leave me a review while you're there. I'd love to hear what you have to say. You've been listening to Kennedy Saves the World on the Fox News Podcast Network.